It's that time of year again, where we watch enthusiasts quietly sneak away from the kids as they gorge on their Halloween booty to take a quiet moment to appreciate a different kind of candy. And that's glowing wrist candy. Welcome to Lume-O-Ween 2025. Now, regular viewers know what you're in for. But for you relative time newbies, this is my annual special where I look back at the top 5 watches over the last year for Lume. Basically the best of Lume for 2025. And this includes watches that have great longevity, where they're just crazy strong and last forever, as well as watches that demonstrate pure creativity, or just as a killer loomed up design. And this year I've seen both. Now, the only rule for Lume-O-Ween is that it has to be a watch I've reviewed since the last Lume-O-Ween. So just bear that in mind. But let's get to it, and coming in at number 5 and starting this whole thing off is the Formex Reef. And more specifically, the Radiant Bronze 39.5mm Baby Reef. If you're not familiar with this one or not familiar with Formex, go check out the review. This is one you should really know about, as Formex is a smaller Swiss brand that makes some amazing watches. Think Christopher Ward, but more unusual designs, some killer unique innovations, and even better quality. This really is a premium diver that holds up to entry-level luxury. And this Radiant Bronze version has a really cool, interesting dial, which, as the name suggests, is made of bronze, which not only has a vertical brushing applied to it to give it a killer look, but there's also a lacquer coating to keep it from ever developing a patina. And when it comes to lume, this is another area where the Reef shines, pun intended. The design itself is fairly standard. There's blue BGW9 everywhere. And at this price, you'd think you could expect good lume. However, even at this price point, I've seen plenty of watches that fall short when it comes to lume. A lot of brands just don't value it. So it's good to see Formex cares about every aspect of their watches. And here, they went all in with some incredibly strong lume, like King of Lume levels of lume, meaning it's some of the best I've ever seen. And after 8 years of running this channel, that should mean something. Coming in at number 4 is the Wise Flyboy. And if you're familiar with Wise, you're familiar with the channel, that probably shouldn't be a surprise. Because Wise has dominated Lume-O-Ween over the last few years, so it's expected to see them somewhere on this list. And they've done that with not just crazy good divers, but also that fully lumed Hitman, which is still the best lume I've ever seen on a watch. It's next level compared to even everything here. So when Wise sends me something, I know it's going to be good. And that's especially true here. And what's really impressive is how good this one is, even with a printed dial. Now, Wise has put their own touch on this one. The case is 904L steel, not 316. It has a great looking blue dial. But for the most part, it is a Type B Flieger design, which means printed indices, which usually means crappy lume. At least compared to applied indices. But that's not true here. Here, even all the printed bits on the dial still outlast a standard Seiko, while the hands just go on and on, making this a killer watch for lume and easily the best Flieger I've seen for it. For number 3, we have a watch that may not be as strong as the others listed here, but as you can see, it's pretty creative. This is the Farr and Swit Wayfinder. Now, I reviewed the original Wayfinder years ago, but this year they came out with a new 40mm version, which is not only smaller, but it's also thinner and has 3 times the water resistance, now at 300 meters. And as far as I'm concerned, it also has a better looking, more refined case. So by day, this is an unusual, interesting looking diver that looks like a map. But at night, all of that gets amplified, creating one of the most creative dials I've ever seen for lume. And as a side note, for those of you who are from Chicago and you're a fan of the Cubbies, there is a Chicago-specific version with Wrigley Field just above those hands. However, I think they only shipped to addresses north of Madison. Now luckily, Farr and Swit went the distance with this one, using the best grade of lume they could for each of the different colors. So while this isn't the strongest watch for lume this year, it's still really good, ensuring you and everyone around you can enjoy this one for most of the night. Just don't take it into a movie theater. I got yelled at once while wearing the fully lumed Hitman, but that's a whole other story. Next up, we have the first of 2 Lumicast type watches. And if there was a lume theme for this last year, it was Lumicast. Now, if you're not familiar with Lumicast, it's a newer technique where the hands and the indices are 3D printed with a luminous material. instead of either being printed directly on the dial or having a metal frame that is then filled with lume. And this not only gives you a cool 3D lume effect from all sides of the indices, but it also offers the potential for more better lume. Keyword there is potential, because I've seen some other watches in the last few years that have a Lumicast dial, but they never quite lived up to the hype. However, this year, that changed. So for the second best watch of 2025 and our first great Lumicast watch, we have the Jack Mason Pursuit Pilot. And this includes all three of the Pursuit Pilot versions. There's the regular version and the anniversary version, which were released at the beginning of this year. And those were put out to celebrate Jack Mason's 10th anniversary. They're actually kind of a re-release or new version of what was one of their first watches from 10 years ago. Whereas this newest Pro version that was just released last month is sort of a Dive Pilot hybrid. Basically, it's their take on a Tudor FXD. Something a little bigger and a little tougher than the regular ones. But whichever one you look at, they're all great, well-made watches with an LJP G101 powering it all. And as far as I know, these also represent a world's first by using X2 grade superluminova in that Lumicast setup. For the most part, the design is that of a classic pilot's watch, and I believe these were inspired by the IWC Mark 16. And what I loved about them is that they fixed a common problem I have with a lot of pilot's watches, which is that most pilot's watches are printed, making them rather flat looking and sometimes rather boring when you really look at the details. Whereas these, with the Lumicast dial, gives the design a lot of needed depth, as well as a lot of killer lume from all sides. Now before we get to the top watch, I do have a couple of honorable mentions. First up is the Victory Sands from Presidious Watches, which was a watch that was made to celebrate the anniversary of the Battle of Iwo Jima. And in some ways, if I'm being honest here, this could also be a dishonorable mention, because the lume here flat out sucks. However, I still appreciate the idea behind it, what they were trying to do, which was to show off a glowing battle plan, and it does that, if only for a few seconds. There's also the recent Phoebus Depth Hunter, which during the day looks a little bit unusual, but when the lume comes to life, it is a really cool design. As well as the new Real Sugar Dr. Pepper Stratotimer from Jack Mason, which is their latest collaboration with Dr. Pepper, which includes a partially fully lumed bezel, which just looks cool, as well as the 10, 2, and 4 Easter egg that they've also done on previous Dr. Pepper collaborations. Now, without further ado, coming in at number 1 is the Christopher Ward Lumière, which probably shouldn't be a surprise. Christopher Ward is known for making some great divers with great bracelets, and that's here as well. But for this one, Christopher Ward went all in on that Lumicast idea, creating basically their version of a Tudor Pelagos. So it's a great premium diver with a toolier take than most of their other divers. And a lot of that is emphasized by these massively tall Lumicast indices, which are far taller than any other Lumicast watch I've seen. Now, to be fair here, Christopher Ward doesn't refer to this as a Lumicast. They have their own name for it, which I think is like Globalite or something. But it's basically the same thing, and everyone else calls it Lumicast, so we're just going to roll with it. But my main point is that these tall indices and the skeletonized hands is why this watch is number 1 this year. In terms of outright lume strength, both this and the Jack Mason are exceptional, but they're not quite King of Lume level exceptional. They're fantastic, but they're also not the best I've ever seen. However, those Lumicast indices add a whole other dimension of glowing goodness to the design. So it really is lume in 3D. This is one you just have to check out in person to see, just to take in the depth of the dial during the day and the night. And if you're a lume nut, I guarantee this one won't disappoint you. The price might, but the lume won't. And with that, LUMEOWEEN 2025 has come to an end. However, if you still want some more lume, you can always go back and check out the previous LUMEOWEENs. But before you do, let me know your thoughts down below on not only these watches, but if you have a watch that you think could compete with these, a true torch in the night, let me know. And if it's good enough, it might be in next year's LUMEOWEEN. And as always, you guys know what to do down below. Like, comment, subscribe, start over from the beginning, all that stuff. I'm Shane, this is Relative Time, and I'll see you next time.